Chosen one, pause and lean into this moment with both urgency and tenderness because what you are stepping into is not entertainment, not coincidence, not another passing message drifting across your screen. This is a decree. Heaven did not guide you here casually. You were drawn here on purpose at this precise time because something long in review has reached its conclusion. Your heart may have grown tired from waiting, but waiting was never the same as being forgotten. For years, it felt as though your story was suspended, as though injustice went unanswered, as though sabotage and delay were allowed to linger unchecked. Yet in the unseen realm, your life has been a case file resting on the desk of the highest judge. Every detail documented, every motive examined, every tear recorded. And now the stamp has finally come down. What is unfolding is not hype. It is not emotional excitement. It is a spiritual ruling, a reversal written with authority. Years of theft, delay, and quiet sabotage are being addressed in order, not chaos. Agreement matters. When you say, "I receive my reversal," you are not seeking attention. You are aligning with what heaven has already declared. Chosen one. There is a place in the unseen realm that most never consider, not the grand throne room blazing with glory and public declaration, but a quieter chamber where reversals are authorized, where situations the enemy marked as permanently closed are reopened with precision. This is the chamber of reversals, heaven's courtroom of restoration, where cases long contested are revisited not with emotion, but with authority. You assumed some chapters of your life were sealed. You believed certain losses were final. You accepted some delays as permanent. But what you interpreted as closure was often only pending review. The enemy is bold in declaring endings. He stamps failure where there was only interruption. He labels delay as denial. He presents sabotage as fate. He closes doors loudly to convince you they will never open again. Yet there is a higher jurisdiction that does not rely on his declarations. In this chamber, God revisits what was prematurely concluded. He examines what was misrepresented. He reopens what was wrongly sealed. Not because he overlooked it before, but because timing governs justice. What looks like silence is often process. Scripture has always whispered this pattern. Think of the Red Sea, a moment where escape routes vanished and oppression seemed irreversible. The waters stood like walls, and the enemy assumed victory was certain. Yet in a single command, what looked like a dead end became a pathway. That was not improvisation. That was reversal. Consider the lion's den, where confinement appeared final and accusation seemed justified. The stones sealed the entrance, and the night promised destruction. Yet morning revealed protection. The den became a testimony. And then the grave, the most irreversible image imaginable, sealed and guarded, declared closed by human authority. But resurrection rewrote what appeared permanent. These were not dramatic coincidences. They were rulings. Each reversal proved that God specializes in impossible turns. He does not panic when doors close. He does not concede when opposition intensifies. He waits. He weighs. He acts when precision meets purpose. The same God who parted seas, silenced lions, and emptied graves operates in your story with the same character. The scale may differ, the timeline may differ, but the jurisdiction remains. In the chamber of reversals, heaven keeps record. Every tear you thought fell unnoticed was counted, not metaphorically dismissed, but documented with care. Every injustice that felt dismissed by human systems was recorded in detail. Doors that were unfairly shut did not disappear from the record. Blessings intercepted by sabotage were not erased from assignment. Years that felt wasted were not shrugged off as collateral damage. They were weighed. Precision matters in this chamber. Nothing is vague, nothing is approximated. Every motive behind betrayal is examined. Every consequence of delay is measured. You may have believed your case was too small to matter. Perhaps you told yourself that compared to biblical miracles, your disappointment seemed minor. But heaven does not grade pain by scale. What wounded you mattered. What was stolen from you mattered. What was delayed unjustly mattered. In his chamber, there is no dismissal because something seems ordinary. Restoration begins when heaven's precision meets human pain. Understand something vital. This is not sudden luck. It is not random favor falling from nowhere. It is assigned ruling moving from the unseen into the seen. When a case concludes in this chamber, the shift may look sudden to observers. It may appear as coincidence or fortunate timing. But what unfolds outwardly has already been authorized inwardly. The stamp does not fall impulsively. It falls when evidence has been reviewed fully and alignment is established completely. For years, you may have felt as though nothing was moving. You prayed, you adjusted, you forgave, you endured, and still visible change seemed delayed. What you could not see was the review process unfolding. Motives were being exposed. Patterns were being revealed. Your responses were being recorded. Your obedience strengthened your position. Your restraint preserved your authority. The case matured quietly. The chamber of reversals is not chaotic. It is orderly. It does not act out of emotional urgency. It moves with deliberate timing. When the ruling is signed, it does not require fanfare. It simply begins to shift circumstances. Doors reopen unexpectedly. Opportunities return in new forms. Conversations align without manipulation. What once resisted now responds. Observers may call it luck. You will recognize it as justice unfolding. There's also restoration beyond replacement. When God reverses, he does not merely return what was lost. He recalibrates the entire sequence. The Red Sea did not only provide escape, it established freedom. The lion's den did not only spare Daniel, it elevated his influence. The grave did not only release life, it redefined eternity. Reversal carries multiplication. It restores with intention. Chosen one, your life has been under review in this chamber. The enemy claimed certain things were final. He assumed delays were permanent. He believed theft was irreversible. But the highest judge does not operate under his narrative. What was stamped prematurely by opposition is being reviewed under divine authority. And when the final stamp falls from heaven's hand, it carries weight. You may not see everything change overnight, but you will sense movement. You will recognize alignment. You will feel clarity replacing confusion. This is how rulings transition from unseen to seen. Quietly at first, subtly, then undeniably. This is the spine of your story now. Not random recovery, not accidental opportunity, not emotional hype. A ruling signed in the chamber of reversals, moving into manifestation. The years were weighed. The tears were counted. The injustices were documented. And now, what the enemy claimed was permanently closed is being reopened with authority. Chosen one. Your case was never forgotten. It was reviewed, and the stamp has come down. Chosen one. The first decree released from the chamber of reversals is this delay turns into acceleration. And before you can fully receive it, the pain must be named honestly. You started before others. You prepared early. You invested when no one was watching. You sowed consistently. Yet you watched people who began later move ahead visibly. You saw their platforms expand while yours felt paused. You witnessed their harvest come quickly while your field appeared stubborn and slow. There were moments when it felt unfair, not because you envied them, but because you knew the weight of your own preparation. You questioned the timing. You wondered if you misheard direction. You examined your strategy repeatedly. You asked whether you lacked something essential. Watching others pass you while you stood still felt like silent humiliation. It felt like standing at a starting line long after the race had already begun. And what made it heavier was that you knew you were not lazy. You were not careless. You were not uncommitted. Yet the visible outcomes did not match the internal effort. But delay was not denial. It was protection. Timing is rarely about readiness alone. It is about alignment. If your harvest had arrived when you first expected it, you might have shared it with people who were never meant to steward your next season. Some relationships around you were comfortable with your preparation phase, but would have been threatened by your promotion phase. Some alliances were sustainable in obscurity, but unstable in visibility. Delay quietly removed individuals who could not carry the weight of your expansion. You interpreted the slow movement as stagnation, yet heaven was filtering your environment. The wrong partnerships dissolved. The wrong dependencies weakened. The wrong expectations faded. If acceleration had begun too early, certain people would have attached themselves to your growth without the character to sustain it. Protection sometimes looks like postponement. It feels restrictive in the moment, but it prevents entanglement later. Timing also refined you. While others advanced quickly, you deepened quietly. Your skills sharpened. Your discernment matured. Your confidence detached from applause. The internal architecture strengthened. Quick success without depth often collapses under pressure. Your delay fortified the foundation. You were not being sidelined. You were being strengthened. What looked like falling behind was actually being prepared for a different pace entirely. Now the decree shifts the timeline. Acceleration does not mean frantic speed. It means compression. What should have taken years begins to unfold in months and weeks. Conversations that once stalled now move forward smoothly. Projects that lingered suddenly gain traction. Connections align in rapid sequence. The pace changes, yet it does not feel chaotic. It feels peaceful. That is the sign of divine acceleration. Speed without peace is pressure. Speed with peace is alignment. This compression restores lost time without overwhelming you. It feels as though steps that once required constant effort now align organically. You no longer chase momentum. Momentum meets you. Doors that previously resisted open without excessive force. Invitations arrive unexpectedly. Responses come quicker than anticipated. Where silence lingered for months, clarity appears in days. The rhythm shifts noticeably. There will be a tangible sign of this decree. One process that has been stuck will suddenly move. Perhaps paperwork that stalled receives approval. Perhaps a conversation long delayed finally occurs. Perhaps a creative project that felt blocked begins flowing effortlessly. You will recognize it because the shift will feel disproportionate to your effort. It will not be something you forced. It will unfold faster than logic can explain. Another sign will be the breaking of long silence. Someone who disappeared may reach out. A response you stopped expecting may arrive. A door you mentally closed may reopen under different terms. The timing will feel precise, not random, not accidental, as though the environment was waiting for an invisible signal to proceed. That signal is the decree in motion. Acceleration also reshapes your mindset. You will stop interpreting every pause as rejection. You will stop comparing your timeline to others. You will trust the pace unfolding before you. The old frustration dissolves because movement confirms alignment. You realize you are never behind. You are being calibrated. The years that felt slow become the reason you can now move quickly without instability. Chosen one, divine acceleration carries peace because it flows from order. You will not feel frantic trying to catch up. You will feel steady, stepping into momentum. Opportunities will not overwhelm you because your capacity has been strengthened. You will not scramble to prove yourself because identity has been secured. Acceleration without identity creates anxiety. Acceleration with identity produces clarity. Be attentive when this shift begins. Do not dismiss it as coincidence. When one stuck area suddenly moves, recognize it as confirmation. When a long silence breaks, receive it as evidence. When a door shifts faster than logic can explain, acknowledge the decree. These moments are not isolated events. They are indicators of compression. This does not mean every area changes simultaneously. It means alignment begins cascading. One shift triggers another. One open door reveals a second. One answered question clarifies the next step. The pace builds gradually, but noticeably. You will sense that time is cooperating rather than resisting. Delay had purpose. It removed misalignment. It fortified character. It strengthened endurance. Now acceleration carries restoration. What was paused resumes with clarity. What was postponed proceeds with order. What was hindered advances with peace. Chosen one decree. One stands firm, delay turns into acceleration. Not rushed, not chaotic, but compressed, aligned, and unmistakable. Watch for the sudden movement in one area you had nearly given up on. Listen for the breaking of silence you thought was permanent. Observe the door that shifts faster than logic predicts. These are not random turns. They are rulings unfolding. The race was never about who moved first. It was about who was prepared when the time compressed. And now, as momentum meets maturity, you will move not from desperation to catch up, but from alignment that propels you forward with speed that still feels peaceful. Chosen one, the second decree released from the chamber of reversals, speaks directly into one of the heaviest pressures you have carried. Financial loss turns into supernatural gain. This is not motivational language. This is not surface-level optimism. This is a correction in heaven's ledger. What you thought disappeared into silence was documented with precision. Every act of unseen generosity, every sacrifice made when no one applauded, every faithful offering given in seasons when you barely had enough, every quiet decision to remain honest when dishonesty might have accelerated profit. Nothing was miscounted. Heaven keeps books differently than human systems. Earth measures transactions by visible exchange. Heaven measures them by motive and obedience. You may have given when it felt inconvenient. You may have supported others when your own resources were stretched. You may have declined opportunities that would have compromised your integrity financially. At times you wondered if faithfulness was costing you too much, but heaven's ledger is exact. There is no rounding error. There is no forgotten entry. There is no overlooked seed. Now, name the theft honestly. You experienced unfair loss. Money that should have remained slipped through your hands. Plans that were financially strategic collapsed unexpectedly. Opportunities that could have generated stability were intercepted. Partnerships that promised growth dissolved abruptly. Momentum that you worked hard to build slowed without clear explanation. Debt pressure tightened around you. You felt the weight of numbers that did not reflect your effort. And perhaps more painful than the loss itself was the sense of injustice attached to it. Financial warfare often strikes deeper than pride admits. It touches security. It touches provision. It touches identity. When resources shrink, fear tries to expand. You may have questioned your stewardship. You may have wondered whether you mismanaged something. You may have replayed decisions trying to pinpoint where things turned. But some losses were not mismanagement. They were sabotage. Some interruptions were not incompetence. They were interception. And while the enemy celebrated visible depletion, heaven continued recording invisible faithfulness. Decree 2 announces multiplication, not mere replacement, restoration with interest, return beyond what was taken. This is not about greed, it is about justice. When something is stolen under divine assignment, heaven does not simply restore the original amount, it recalibrates the flow. What you lost becomes seed for something greater. What drained you becomes groundwork for provision that carries less strain and more stability. Supernatural gain does not always arrive dramatically. It often appears through alignment. Unexpected provision surfaces at precise moments. Resources arrive without you chasing aggressively. A door opens that generates income in ways you did not previously imagine. A financial strategy becomes clear that multiplies what once felt limited. The restoration feels orderly, not chaotic. It feels sustainable, not temporary. You may begin to notice subtle shifts. A new stream opens. Perhaps a skill you overlooked becomes profitable. Perhaps a connection introduces you to opportunity you never sought. Perhaps a creative idea generates revenue without manipulation. You did not force it. You did not compromise to secure it. It arrived aligned. That alignment is evidence of the decree. Financial burden easing is another sign. Debt pressure that once felt suffocating begins to loosen. A payment is reduced. An obligation shifts. An unexpected credit appears. A cost you feared increases does not materialize. Provision does not always come as a lump sum miracle. Sometimes it arrives as relief. Sometimes it appears as strategic clarity that saves you more than sudden cash ever could. The peace accompanying these shifts will confirm their source. Supernatural gain also restores momentum. Money is not just currency, it is movement. When finances stabilize, creativity flows more freely. When pressure eases, decisions become clearer. The theft of momentum you felt during loss begins to reverse. You find yourself thinking strategically again. You consider expansion without panic. You plan without dread. There will be a moment of confirmation. A surprise opportunity arrives without manipulation required. You will not need to overpromise. You will not need to convince aggressively. It will align. The conversation will feel natural. The offer will feel fair. The exchange will feel balanced. That balance is important. Restoration that requires compromise is not restoration, it is substitution. What arrives under this decree will not require you to sacrifice integrity. Chosen one, this decree is not permission to become reckless. It is invitation to steward wisely. As multiplication unfolds, remember the lessons of scarcity. Maintain discipline, preserve generosity, guard integrity. The same heaven that recorded your faithfulness during loss observes your stewardship during increase. Supernatural gain is sustained through wisdom. Understand that this restoration may not look identical to what was taken. It may surpass it in form and function. The job lost may be replaced by an opportunity more aligned with purpose. The plan that collapsed may give way to a strategy more sustainable. The partnership that failed may clear space for one rooted in integrity. Restoration is rarely replication. It is recalibration. Heaven's ledger is balanced now. The years weighed. The sacrifices accounted. The losses reviewed. And multiplication authorized. What felt like unfair depletion becomes fertile ground for provision that carries peace. Watch for the new stream opening quietly. Notice the burden easing gradually. Recognize the surprise opportunity that requires no manipulation. These are not coincidences. They are indicators of Decree 2 in motion. Financial loss turns into supernatural gain, not because you demanded it, but because justice required it. What was taken is not merely returned. It is restored with interest. And as provision aligns with purpose, you'll recognize that heaven's accounting was always precise, even when Earth's systems felt unfair. Chosen one. The third decree, released from the Chamber of Reversals, addresses a wound that cut deeper than financial loss or delayed opportunity slander, turns into vindication. This warfare was invisible, subtle, and strategic. It did not always arrive as direct confrontation. It came as whispers, as altered tones, as subtle shifts in how people responded to you. Conversations happened in rooms you were not in. Narratives were shaped without your input. Pieces of truth were twisted just enough to distort perception without appearing outright false. Slander rarely announces itself openly. It travels quietly through suggestion. It hides in concerned conversations. It spreads through phrases like, "I'm not sure, but," or "you didn't hear this from me." It reshapes your image gradually, so that by the time you sense something has changed, you cannot easily trace the source. The atmosphere shifts around you. Doors feel colder. Invitations grow fewer. People treat you differently, yet no one can point to a specific incident. That ambiguity is what makes it so disorienting. You felt it. You sensed something was off. The warmth you once experienced became cautious. The openness became guarded. The confidence others had in you seemed to erode subtly. Yet when you tried to identify the cause, there was no clear accusation to confront. You could not fight what you could not trace. You could not defend yourself against words you never heard directly. The injustice settled in your chest like weight. Not explosive anger, but heavy confusion. You replayed interactions, searching for missteps. You wondered if you had unintentionally offended someone. You questioned whether your growth had triggered insecurity. You considered whether your boundaries had been misinterpreted. The lack of clarity intensified the pain. Visible opposition is easier to address than hidden distortion. When warfare is invisible, it attacks your confidence more than your reputation. Understand this clearly. Slander is not merely human gossip, it is spiritual distortion. Its goal is not only to damage your image, but to isolate you from alignment. If others withdraw trust, your opportunities shrink. If your name becomes questionable, your influence weakens. If you feel misunderstood long enough, you may retreat voluntarily. The enemy attempts to shrink your environment through subtle narrative shifts. And because you value integrity, the distortion felt unbearable. Heaven saw what you could not see. Every whisper was recorded, every twisted phrase documented, every motive behind secret conversations examined. While you wrestled with confusion, heaven gathered clarity. Vindication does not operate on emotional reaction. It operates on exposure. And exposure requires timing. If truth surfaces prematurely, it can be dismissed as defensive. If it surfaces strategically, it stands undeniable. Decree 3 announces heaven's response. Truth surfaces without you begging, proving, or campaigning. You do not need to chase down every rumor. You do not need to argue in every room. You do not need to exhaust yourself defending your name. God clears names His way. And His way does not require your panic. It requires your patience. Vindication may arrive quietly at first. A contradiction appears in someone's story. A narrative shifts because details no longer align. A person who once believed misinformation begins to question it. A motive behind previous treatment becomes visible. The exposure may not always be dramatic, but it will be undeniable. What was hidden cannot remain concealed indefinitely under divine review. There may even be a direct manifestation, a confession from someone who realizes the distortion they participated in, a mistake that accidentally reveals the truth, a conversation overheard that clarifies what once felt mysterious, or a revealed motive that reframes how others interpret past events. Vindication does not always look like public apology. Sometimes it looks like quiet correction in perception. Chosen one. Your vindication does not depend on your explanation. It depends on divine exposure. When God clears a name, He does so in ways that preserve dignity. You will not need to humiliate others to regain credibility. You will not need to relive every detail publicly. Instead, environments will shift. Treatment will change. Trust will return. Opportunities will reopen. The same rooms that once felt uncertain will feel steady again. You may notice something subtle but powerful. Your internal heaviness lifts before external evidence fully manifests. Peace replaces the tightness in your chest. You no longer feel the need to defend yourself in imaginary conversations. You stop rehearsing explanations. That internal release signals that the decree is active. Vindication begins in peace before it appears in public. There will also be visible confirmation. Someone who distanced themselves may reconnect with new understanding. A leader who once hesitated may express renewed confidence in you. A project once withheld may be reconsidered. These shifts will not feel forced. They will feel aligned. You will recognize them as restoration, not coincidence. Slander attempted to rewrite your story without your consent. Vindication restores authorship. You regain narrative stability, not because you shouted louder, but because truth surfaced naturally. The enemy tried to cloud perception. Heaven clears it. Remember this. You were never truly defined by what was whispered. Your integrity remained intact, even when your image felt distorted. And now, as Decree 3 unfolds, the injustice that sat silently in your chest begins to dissolve. What was twisted straightens. What was hidden emerges. What was misrepresented aligns with truth. Chosen one, slander turns into vindication, not through confrontation, but through revelation. And when revelation arrives, it will not require your effort to sustain it. It will stand on its own weight. Your name will carry clarity again. Your influence will stabilize. Your peace will return fully. Watch for the contradiction. Listen for the confession. Notice the mistake that exposes what was hidden. These are not random occurrences. They are signs that heaven's ruling is moving from unseen to seen. And as truth surfaces in its appointed time, you will understand that your silence was not weakness. It was trust. And that trust is now being honored. Chosen one, the fourth decree released from the chamber of reversals touches something deeply personal, something you may not have spoken about freely. Infirmity turns into health and renewal. This is a sacred space, so receive it gently. God saw what doctors did and did not see. He saw the test results that brought relief and the ones that brought concern. He saw the appointments, the prescriptions, the unanswered questions, and he also saw the pain you carried quietly because you did not want to burden others, the fatigue you minimized, the discomfort you dismissed, the symptoms you learned to live around rather than confront openly. You became strong in silence. You smiled when your body felt weak. You showed up when energy felt limited. You told yourself it was temporary, even when the timeline stretched longer than expected. You avoided complaining because you did not want to appear ungrateful. You avoided explaining because you did not want to sound dramatic. Yet heaven counted every moment of perseverance. There was no part of your struggle that went unnoticed. Healing must be framed correctly. It is not denial of medical wisdom. It is not rejection of treatment. It is not superstition. It is alignment with the one who formed you. The one who designed your body understands its structure intimately. The one who breathed life into you knows how to restore what feels misaligned. Scripture reveals repeatedly that what appears permanent can become temporary under divine authority. Conditions that looked fixed were reversed. Weaknesses that seemed final were renewed. The pattern has always been restoration. Infirmity often carries layers beyond the physical. Emotional stress can settle in the body. Prolonged anxiety can manifest as exhaustion. Grief can weaken resilience. You endured seasons of internal pressure that affected you more than you admitted. Your nervous system carried tension long after events passed. Healing, therefore, is not merely physical adjustment, it is holistic renewal. It touches body, mind, and spirit simultaneously. Decree 4 announces a reversal pattern. Restoration begins invisibly. Before symptoms shift, alignment shifts. Before visible change appears, internal strengthening begins. You may notice subtle improvements first. A little more energy than usual. A little less heaviness in your body. Sleep becoming deeper. Anxiety decreasing. These shifts may seem small, but they signal movement. Healing rarely begins with dramatic transformation. It begins with recalibration. Then the visible evidence follows. Strength increases gradually. Stamina returns. Clarity sharpens. You find yourself completing tasks without the same level of strain. Activities that once required recovery now feel manageable. Medical reports may reflect improvement. Treatments may respond more effectively than before. The surprising part is not only the change itself, but the peace accompanying it. Fear loses authority. You stop bracing for the worst. This decree does not dismiss the journey you walked. It honors it. It acknowledges the nights you lay awake praying quietly. It recognizes the strength you borrowed from faith when your body felt unreliable. It validates the frustration of wanting to feel normal again. Healing does not erase your perseverance. It redeems it. You may question whether you deserve renewal. You may wonder whether hope sets you up for disappointment, but hope anchored in God's character is not reckless. It is aligned. The one who formed you is not indifferent to your pain. He is attentive. The reversal does not always look identical to what you imagined. It may not mean instant disappearance of every symptom. It may mean progressive strengthening that surprises you over time. It may mean wisdom for treatment that aligns precisely. It may mean emotional healing that releases physical tension. Watch for the invisible shift. Notice when your mind feels lighter. Observe when your body responds differently. Pay attention to small victories. These are not coincidences. They are indicators that restoration has begun. As renewal unfolds, do not attribute it solely to willpower. Discipline matters, treatment matters, rest matters, but healing under this decree carries divine care beyond effort. There will come a moment when you realize you are stronger than you were months ago. You may look back and recognize that what once felt permanent has loosened its grip. That realization will carry gratitude, and gratitude becomes testimony. Your healing will not be about proving resilience. It will point back to God's attentiveness. Others will see your strength and ask how you endured. You will know that endurance was sustained by grace. Chosen one, infirmity does not define your identity. It was a chapter, not a label. Renewal is not fantasy, it is promise. The same God who formed your body knows how to restore it. The same hand that carried you through weakness is now strengthening you for fullness. Decree 4 stands infirmity, turns into health and renewal. Not through denial, not through hype, but through divine precision unfolding in stages, invisible restoration leading to visible strength, quiet alignment leading to tangible improvement. And as healing manifests, it becomes evidence not of your willpower, but of God's care. Your body remembers who formed it. Your spirit recognizes who sustains it. And your testimony will reflect that the one who saw your silent pain was also the one who restored your strength. Chosen one. The fifth decree, released from the Chamber of Reversals, addresses a battlefield that few saw, but you felt constantly mental warfare turns into supernatural peace. This was not visible like financial loss or public slander. It was internal. It lived in your thoughts. It circled in your mind late at night. It rose suddenly in the middle of ordinary days. Anxious spirals that began with a small concern and expanded into worst-case scenarios. Intrusive thoughts that felt foreign yet persistent. Heaviness that sat on your chest without a clear source. Shame loops replaying past mistakes long after they were forgiven. Exhaustion that sleep could not repair. You tried to discipline your thinking. You attempted to reason with fear. You prayed. You distracted yourself. Sometimes it worked temporarily. Other times it felt like the pressure returned stronger. And because this battle was internal, you sometimes blamed yourself. You wondered if you were not strong enough spiritually. You questioned whether you lacked faith. You compared your internal struggle to others who seemed calm and concluded you were deficient. But this was not you being weak. This was targeted pressure. Mental warfare intensifies right before breakthrough because clarity is dangerous to darkness. If your mind is clouded, your discernment dulls. If your thoughts are noisy, your direction blurs. If shame dominates, your confidence shrinks. The enemy understood that your rising required internal stability. So pressure was applied where it would be hardest to trace. It was subtle but relentless. You were not attacked because you were fragile. You were targeted because you were advancing. Anxious spirals often disguise themselves as responsibility. You thought you were being thorough. You thought you were preparing. But the thoughts did not produce solutions. They produced paralysis. Intrusive fears masqueraded as caution. Shame loops pretended to be humility, yet none of them generated peace. They drained you. They created internal noise so loud that clarity struggled to surface. Decree 5 declares an exchange. Fear loses permission. That phrase matters. Fear does not always disappear instantly, but it loses authority. It no longer dictates your decisions. It no longer frames your identity. It no longer narrates your future. Clarity returns gradually at first, then steadily. Internal quiet becomes a holy sign that interference is lifting. Supernatural peace is not the absence of responsibility. It is the presence of alignment. It arrives without external explanation. Circumstances may not change immediately. Challenges may still exist, yet something shifts inside you. The spirals shorten. The intrusive thoughts weaken. The heaviness lightens. You notice moments of silence in your mind that were once rare. That silence is not emptiness. It is restoration. You will recognize this decree by the quality of your thoughts. Instead of rehearsing catastrophic outcomes, you consider practical steps calmly. Instead of replaying shame, you recall growth. Instead of anticipating disaster, you anticipate possibility. Hope rises quietly like dawn before sunrise. It does not demand attention. It simply appears steady and warm. There will be moments when you wake up and realize your mind feels clear, not euphoric, not overstimulated, just clear. The exhaustion that sleep could not fix begins to fade because the internal tension that caused it is dissolving. Rest becomes restorative again. You no longer carry invisible weight through every conversation. Your nervous system stabilizes. Your breathing deepens without effort. This exchange also affects your perception of yourself. Where once you labeled yourself anxious or fragile, you begin to see resilience. Where once you identified with overthinking, you begin to recognize discernment. The narratives that shaped your identity loosen. You understand that warfare was not proof of weakness. It was evidence of proximity to breakthrough. Peace will not require constant affirmation. It will settle naturally. You may notice yourself responding to stressful news with steadiness rather than panic. You may observe that situations which once triggered spirals now receive measured thought. That change confirms lifting interference. Supernatural peace does not numb you, it steadies you. Chosen one. This decree does not dismiss practical care. Counseling, support, rest, community all remain valuable. Supernatural peace works alongside wisdom. It strengthens what is healthy. It restores what was strained. It clears mental fog so you can discern accurately. It stabilizes your internal environment so external challenges do not destabilize you. There will be a moment of recognition. Perhaps you encounter a scenario that once would have consumed your thoughts for days. Instead, you process it calmly. You take necessary action. Then you release it. You do not replay it endlessly. That release is not indifference. It is authority. Your mind is returning to soundness. The heaviness that once defined evenings begins to lift. The shame loops lose intensity. The intrusive fears lose clarity. Hope becomes more accessible than dread. You begin to anticipate good without bracing for collapse. That hope is not naive optimism. It is alignment restored. Decree 5 stands mental warfare turns into supernatural peace. The battlefield quiets. Fear loses its seat. Clarity returns to the throne of your mind. You stop living inside spirals and start living inside steadiness. Peace arrives without external explanation, and you recognize it as divine intervention. Chosen one, your mind is not your enemy. It is being reclaimed. The interference that once clouded your thoughts is lifting. And as soundness reappears, you will realize that what once felt relentless was never permanent. Supernatural peace is not temporary relief. It is the restoration of internal order. And that order prepares you for everything the next season requires. Chosen one, the 6th decree, released from the chamber of reversals, speaks to a loss that reshaped your heart more than you admitted. Relational loss turns into divine connection. Before restoration, there was cost. Betrayal taught you walls. Disappointment taught you distance. Loneliness slowly became your safe plan. You convinced yourself that limited access meant limited pain. You learned to rely on yourself because relying on others felt unpredictable. You stopped expecting consistency. You told yourself independence was strength even when it felt isolating. Relationships that once carried promise dissolved unexpectedly. Trust that felt secure cracked without warning. You invested emotionally only to discover misalignment later. Each fracture left residue. You began to guard your inner world more tightly. Vulnerability felt risky. Openness felt expensive. So you adjusted. You reduced expectations. You interacted but carefully. You loved but cautiously. Walls formed gradually, brick by brick, each one justified by experience. Loneliness can become comfortable when it feels safer than disappointment. It allows control. It limits variables. It reduces vulnerability, yet it also restricts connection. You may have told yourself you were content alone, but deep within there was still desire for alignment. You were not created for isolation. You were designed for partnership, for collaboration, for community that reflects divine intention. Decree 6 announces both removal and replacement. Toxic ties dissolve not as punishment, but as protection. Draining access gets cut not as rejection, but as refinement. Some relationships were assignments, not alignments. They served a purpose in growth, but they were not designed for your next season. When divine acceleration begins, misaligned connections cannot remain. They create friction in forward movement. So heaven intervenes quietly. You may notice certain conversations fading naturally. You may sense emotional distance forming without hostility. You may recognize that access once granted freely now feels inappropriate. This is not bitterness, it is discernment. Removal precedes replacement. Space must clear before alignment can enter. Replacement does not look chaotic, it looks clean. Aligned people arrive with steady presence rather than dramatic intensity. Their intentions feel unforced. Their words carry sincerity. Their actions match their promises. You do not feel the need to perform around them. You do not feel the need to prove your worth. There is ease, not tension. There is clarity, not confusion. The new relational pattern feels different immediately. Instead of guessing where you stand, you sense stability. Instead of decoding mixed signals, you experience consistency. Love no longer feels like a trap, where vulnerability is later weaponized. It feels like partnership, where mutual growth is encouraged. You stop bracing for betrayal. You start recognizing support. Divine connections are not always romantic. They include mentors who speak truth without manipulation, friends who understand without demanding explanation, colleagues who collaborate without competition, leaders who guide without control. These connections carry spiritual alignment. They feel purposeful. They appear timely. You will know the shift has begun when one timely connection enters your life. Perhaps you meet someone in a right place, right time moment that feels orchestrated rather than random. Perhaps a mentor voice emerges just when clarity is needed. Perhaps a friend appears who understands your depth without you performing strength. You will sense alignment instantly. Not intense excitement, but calm recognition. These connections will not drain you. They will strengthen you. After conversations, you will feel energized rather than exhausted. After vulnerability, you will feel safe rather than exposed. After collaboration, you will feel expanded rather than diminished. That difference matters. Chosen one relational restoration also requires internal adjustment. Walls built for survival must soften gradually. Discernment remains, but fear recedes. You will learn to differentiate between healthy caution and unnecessary isolation. You will practice openness in measured ways. Trust rebuilds through consistency, not pressure. Do not rush this process. Divine connections are cultivated, not forced. Allow them to develop organically. Observe character over charisma. Notice patterns over promises. Alignment reveals itself over time. And when it does, you will feel gratitude rather than anxiety. Decree 6 does not promise that you will never experience disappointment again. It promises that you will no longer build your life around it. Loss no longer defines your relational strategy. Divine connection becomes your expectation. You may look back and realize that loneliness preserved you when misalignment surrounded you. It was not permanent design, but it was temporary shelter. Now shelter gives way to partnership. Walls become gates. Distance becomes discernment. Isolation becomes intentional community. Chosen one relational loss turns into divine connection, not through desperation, but through alignment. The people assigned to your next season will recognize your value without you shrinking. They will respect your boundaries without resentment. They will celebrate your growth without jealousy. Watch for the timely meeting. Listen for the mentor voice. Notice the friend who understands without performance. Recognize the partnership that feels steady, not confusing. These are not coincidences. They are confirmations. Heaven removes to refine and replaces to restore. Your heart was never meant to remain closed. It was meant to heal and reopen wisely. And as divine connections begin to form, you will realize that love was never meant to be a trap. It was meant to be partnership aligned with purpose. Chosen one, the seventh decree released from the chamber of reversals, touches the deepest grief you have carried quietly. Wasted years turn into multiplied purpose. This is the ache beneath the surface, not just what was taken, not just who betrayed you, not just what was delayed, but the time. The seasons you believed were lost to the wrong path, the wrong people, spiritual battles that drained you, or long stretches of confusion where you did not know which direction was right. Time feels sacred because it cannot be retrieved, and you have looked back at certain chapters and thought, if only I had known, if only I had chosen differently, if only I had moved sooner. You mourned years that seemed unproductive. You replayed decisions that led to detours. You questioned relationships that consumed energy without yielding alignment. You wondered whether spiritual warfare stole opportunities that could have accelerated you sooner. The grief was not dramatic. It was quiet regret, a sense that your timeline had been compromised. But here's the revelation. Divine math does not calculate the way human regret does. Nothing was wasted. Every season built something invisible that is now visible in your maturity. The wrong path strengthened discernment. The wrong people clarified boundaries. The battles deepened endurance. The confusion sharpened dependence on God. The waiting cultivated patience. What you call wasted time, heaven calls construction time. You were not idle, you were forming. Even in seasons that looked unproductive externally, something was being developed internally. Strength you did not realize you were gaining. Compassion that only suffering could teach. Authority forged in private endurance. You learned how to navigate disappointment without collapsing. You learned how to forgive without forgetting wisdom. You learned how to stand alone when support disappeared. These are not wasted skills. They are foundations for multiplied purpose. Consider the divine pattern often echoed in Scripture. Restoration is not equal return. It is multiplied purpose. When God restores, He does not simply replace what was lost. He redeems it. The years consumed by confusion become the credibility that guides others. The battles you fought privately become authority when you speak publicly. The detours you regret become warnings that protect someone else from similar harm. Joel-like restoration carries multiplication. The years the locusts seem to consume become fertile ground for testimony. Not because pain was good, but because it was redeemed. Your story does not end with regret, it transforms into roadmap. What once felt like wasted space becomes sacred ground for impact. Decree 7 declares that your past is no longer a source of shame. It is a source of strategy. You understand now what you could not have understood then. You recognize patterns more quickly. You discern motives faster. You value peace more deeply. Those lost years installed wisdom that acceleration alone could not have given you. You may begin to feel something shifting internally, a sudden clarity about your assignment. A clean sense of this is what I am here to do. It will not feel frantic. It'll feel anchored. You will stop questioning your direction repeatedly. The fog that once blurred your sense of calling lifts. Instead of asking endlessly, you start knowing steadily. Courage accompanies this clarity, not reckless ambition, but grounded resolve. You feel compelled to move, not because you're trying to make up for lost time, but because alignment feels urgent now. You recognize that the years behind you were preparation, not penalty. And preparation produces readiness. Chosen one, you were never behind schedule. You were on divine timing. Even the wrong turns were absorbed into a larger design. Even the relationships that drained you revealed what you truly needed. Even the spiritual battles that exhausted you refined your resilience. Nothing was wasted. There will be confirmation of this shift An opportunity will align precisely with the skills you developed during those so-called wasted years. A conversation will reveal that your past experience uniquely equips you to help someone. A door will open that requires exactly the compassion you learned through suffering. Suddenly, what felt random feels purposeful. You will also sense internal peace about your history. Instead of cringing at certain memories, you will see them through redemptive clarity. Instead of wishing you could erase chapters, you will recognize how they shaped you. Regret loosens its grip. Gratitude quietly replaces it. Decree 7 stands firm. Wasted years turn into multiplied purpose. Your story is not fragmented. It is woven. Your detours are not embarrassing. They are instructive. Your confusion was not pointless. It was formative. Chosen one, the deepest grief becomes the strongest testimony. The years you mourned become the years that qualify you. The battles you survived become authority you carry. And as clarity settles within you, you will know without panic, without performance, without hesitation, this is what I am here to do. Move forward with courage, not to recover lost time, but to steward redeemed time. What you thought was wasted has been multiplied. And your purpose now carries the weight of every season that built you, even the ones you once wished away. Chosen one, pause and feel the weight of this turning point. You did not stumble into this moment. You did not randomly arrive at breakthrough. You survived evidence building. Every tear, every delay, every injustice, every silent act of obedience became documentation in heaven's courtroom. While you thought you were merely enduring, you were establishing record. While you believed you were just surviving, you were strengthening your case. And now the ruling has been issued in your favor. This is not emotional hype. It is judicial movement in the unseen, becoming visible in the seen. The decrees have gone forth. Delay turns to acceleration. Loss turns to gain. Slander turns to vindication. Infirmity turns to renewal. Mental warfare turns to peace. Relational loss turns to divine connection. Wasted years turn to multiplied purpose. These are not wishes. They are rulings. And rulings move whether critics understand them or not. But listen carefully with wisdom. The enemy's final tactic often appears right before manifestation. When he senses the ruling has been released, he attempts disruption, not through overwhelming force, but through subtle provocation. Doubt may whisper louder than usual. Distraction may appear urgent. Old habits may resurface with strange familiarity. You may feel tempted to revisit doors that were clearly closed. Self-sabotage can masquerade as comfort. Be alert. Do not mistake this pressure for cancellation. It is confirmation. Interference increases when breakthrough is near. The enemy cannot overturn the decree, but he can attempt to delay your cooperation with it. He will try to lure you back into overthinking. He may tempt you to explain yourself unnecessarily. He may provoke emotional reactions that drain your peace. Resist the bait. Protect your clarity. Chosen one, your commission is simple but powerful. Protect your peace as sacred ground. Do not trade it for argument, nostalgia, or validation. Obey promptly when clarity comes. Delayed obedience weakens momentum. Steward blessings with humility. As restoration unfolds, remain grounded. Gratitude sustains what pride can destroy. And refuse to reopen doors God closed. Closure was protection, not punishment. Do not romanticize what heaven removed. Walk forward, appointed, not defensive. You're not scrambling for breakthrough. You're aligning with it. You're not begging for reversal. You are stewarding it. Keep your boundaries clean. Keep your heart soft. Keep your mind disciplined. Keep your posture humble. These choices preserve the ruling in motion. And end this with certainty anchored deep in your spirit. The decree has been issued. The reversal is already moving. You may not see every result today, but you will see evidence. Receipts will appear in the form of open doors, restored strength, unexpected provision, clarified purpose, aligned relationships, and undeniable peace. Your life is about to show tangible proof that heaven ruled in your favor. Chosen one, stand steady. The case is closed. The ruling stands. And what was written in the unseen is about to manifest in the seen.